Chapter 2, To Kill a Mockingbird. So Chapter 2 sets us up with quite a few things. Again, Harper Lee is still using this time to do the exposition so that she's getting you into the details of the story, so that you're understanding the time period and who these people are. So Dill leaves to go back to Meridian, Mississippi. Remember, we're in Alabama. And Scout is miserable because he has left. But then she realizes that she's going to be starting school soon, and she's so excited. She has wanted to go to school for so long. I mean, she spends her days in the treehouse using a little telescope that Jem has given her, just watching the kids at recess playing and watching Jem's red jacket as he's running around, and she just can't wait to get there. So the first morning, I hope you caught there's a little funny hidden in there that usually it's the parents' job to take kids to school, but Atticus announces at breakfast that Jem kindly agreed to take Scout, and she says, I think money exchanged hands because when we went around the corner, there was a jingle in Jem's pocket, an unfamiliar jingle in Jem's pocket. Unfamiliar jingle meaning they don't have money. They don't normally get money. But Atticus, with his courteous detachment, he doesn't even take her to school her first morning. Think back to when you started school. I'm pretty sure your parents probably walked you all the way in. How many years did they park the car and get out and walk you into the building? Those kinds of things. And Atticus is just like, oh, Jem, go ahead and take her, So on the way there, Jem makes sure to tell her that don't bother me at school. Don't come up and talk to me. Don't ask to play our games. Don't speak of any personal stuff. You stay with your friends. I'll stay with my friends. So a little bit of separation between the two of them right there. So let's see. Miss Caroline, there's a question in here that talks about to describe Scout's teacher. Be sure to tell her name. Her first grade teacher is Miss Caroline, and Miss Caroline is supposed to be a very, very symbolic character. All right, so I asked you to describe her, and hopefully you got all the details about how she's wearing a red and white striped dress, and she's got red fingernail polish and lipstick, and she smells and looks like a peppermint drop. She's wearing high heels. Basically, you're supposed to understand that Miss Caroline represents everything that Maycomb is not. She comes in there dressed to the nines, is the old saying. She's all dressed up. She smells good. She's got fingernail polish on. She's from the northern part of Alabama, which it pointed out that this county sided with the North during the Civil War. That's already an X against her of why the kids might not like her. And she's young, and she's pretty, and she's very idealistic. She's going to teach these kids, and she's going to change the world with her knowledge and no one else's. So, kind of weird. You can see my dog's butt in the background. There, now you can see the dog. How's that? Oh, he's going to leave. Sorry. Oh, that wasn't very nice. He must be shy. So anyway, she's very idealistic. The people of Maycomb are not. They are not imaginative. She is supposed to represent the fact that she is an outsider. She doesn't understand them, and they don't understand her. And neither one of them really tries to see the other person's point of view. So when she finds out that Scout can read, she is not happy whatsoever. And she says, you tell your father to stop teaching you, and I'll try to undo the damage. Why would a teacher not want a kid to be able to read already? That's just kind of weird. It's that idealism that she's going to teach her how to read. She's going to teach her how to do everything. And she doesn't want anybody else to interfere. She's got her way of doing things. She also is upset when she finds out that Scout knows how to write. Calpurnia is the one that taught her this. Well, go back to the reading thing. So she doesn't remember being taught to read. It just happened. She doesn't know when she figured out the words that were, above Atticus's finger. It just happened. So she's really upset, and this is something that she and Atticus do every night. She crawls into his lap and he reads to her. And so to have that taken away, she's pretty upset about it. So she starts writing a letter to Dill. And then when the teacher catches her and finds out that she can write, as in cursive, yeah, first grade, not quite 6 years old, cursive writing, most of you can't do that. Kidding, kind of. But when she finds that out, then she's really mad again. And so Scout just doesn't start off on a good foot with Miss Caroline. Calpurnia is the one that taught her to write. It was what she did to keep her out of her way. She'd sit her down, give her a passage out of the Bible to copy. This is important because Calpurnia is black, but Calpurnia knows how to read and write. This isn't normal. Most black people in this time period did not know how to read or write. Maybe their names, sometimes not. You're going to hear about a guy his name is X Billups. They asked him his name and he said X. He doesn't know how to write his name. His parents didn't know how to write a name, so they just called him X. They just put an X on the line on his birth certificate. His name is X. So for Calpurnia to be able to write and read, something's different about Calpurnia. That's what part of what that scene is supposed to show you. All right. So the next thing that happens is Miss Caroline asks everybody who's the bus children who are going home for lunch. So kind of like us, there's no cafeteria, just a one-room schoolhouse type thing, one building for each of the grades or combined grades. And so she says, who's going home for lunch? Who are the bus students? And some of those kids raise their hand and they'll go home. And who are the kids who brought their lunch? And so, those kids pull out molasses buckets. So this was literally the bucket that you would buy syrup, molasses in, and then you would reuse that bucket as your lunch pail. And, the town kids are going to walk home. So there's one kid that doesn't pull anything out. And that kid is Walter Cunningham. And she walks over. Now remember, she doesn't know the kids at all. This is her first day. So I don't fault her for this. She says, Walter, did you forget your lunch? And Walter's like, yeah. And won't even look at her. And she's like, oh, well, here. And she goes to her purse and she pulls out a quarter. Now, remember that. Hold on, I gotta let the dog out. It's whining. Okay, got rid of the dog. So she asks him, she offers him quarter. So remember the video where it talked about, oh yeah, you could get such and such for a nickel, but nobody had a nickel. So she goes up and she offers him a quarter, which a quarter back then is going to be like, I don't know, maybe $5, $8, maybe even $10 today. So it's like her saying, here's $5. Go downtown and get yourself some lunch. Now, on her part, she was just trying to be kind. I can't even count how many times in my 16 years at Kalamazoo Christian, how many times I have given students money because they forgot their lunch money, Wednesday or Friday for pizza. They forgot their money. Mrs. Brown, is there any chance that I could borrow $5? I'll bring it back to you tomorrow. Oh yeah, sure. Or I hear students saying, oh, I don't have any lunch today. I forgot my money. I forgot to get money from my mom. And I offer, you want to borrow? As a teacher, you do that because you don't want to see your kids go hungry. And she doesn't want Walter to go hungry. And so she offers him money to go downtown. What she doesn't understand is that Walter Cunningham doesn't have a quarter at home. Walter Cunningham doesn't have any money at home. And Scout goes into a story about when Atticus did some lawyering work for Mr. Cunningham. So there's this whole thing about his... Oh, now you can see my cat. Oh, just like an animal farm around here today. um, it doesn't matter what entailment is. It's a whole thing about taxes and banking and your land and all this kind of stuff and whatever. That part doesn't matter. What matters is that it's legal business. Mr. Cunningham comes to Atticus. Atticus fixes it for him. And Mr. Cunningham says, I don't know how I'll ever repay you because he doesn't have any money. And Atticus says, don't worry about it. We'll figure it out. And the kids are confused by this. How's he going to pay you? Oh, he'll pay me. You watch. And sure enough, throughout the winter, Scout says that one day a load of stove wood just shows up on their back porch. Another time there's a sack of hickory nuts. Then close to Christmas, there's some smilax and holly, that stuff with the red berries that you decorate with at Christmas. In the springtime, there was a bag of turnip greens. And Atticus says he's paid us. He's paid us in full. And he explains that there are people like the Cunninghams, the farmers, that got hurt the worst in the crash. He's referencing the stock market crash of 1929 that you researched and learned about. He says that the farmers got hurt the worst, and then because the farmers don't have money, they don't have money to pay the business professionals like lawyers and doctors. And so the Cunninghams pay with what they have. They live in the country. They live on a farm. They go out and gather hickory nuts from the woods, and that's what they pay with. He said the doctors work the same way. Some doctors, they'll deliver a baby, and the payment will be a sack of potatoes. That's how they pay for things. They pay with what they have. So what I want you to understand about the Cunninghams is that the Cunninghams represent the people in society that are really, really good, moral people that do the best they can with what they have. They work hard and they don't take anything from others that they can't pay back. So Walter, sitting here in the first grade, won't take the quarter from Miss Caroline. And Miss Caroline thinks that he's just being rude or shy or whatever. Come on, Walter, come and get the quarter. Everybody looks at Scout. Scout is just kind of a natural leader, and everybody knows who her daddy is. So everybody looks at Scout to tell Miss Caroline to do something about this situation. So Scout stands up, because that's what you did in those days. When you were talking to your teacher, you stood up because out of respect. Maybe we'll try that next year. She stands up and she says, Miss Caroline, he's a Cunningham. And she sits down. That should have been enough. If Miss Caroline was somebody from their community, that would have been enough for her to understand that what that meant was that they didn't have the money to pay her back with. That's what it was supposed to be. That's what it was supposed to explain by her saying, he's a Cunningham. But Miss Caroline says, excuse me, Jean Louise? Like, she can't believe that this girl is going to get involved in this situation. Okay? She thinks that Scout is just being sassy. So Scout stands back up again and she says, he's a Cunningham. They don't have much, but they get along on it. They don't take anything that they can't pay back. You don't need any stove wood, so he ain't got nothing to pay you back with. Miss Caroline doesn't understand this because she's an outsider. She has no clue. She thinks Scout's just being sassy. She calls her up. She says, put out your hand. This is another one of those things that I love. It's one of those great jobs by Harper Lee, the author, when Scout says, so I put out my hand and I thought she was going to spit in it because that's the only reason. And it's at the end of the page, so you might have missed it, but she says, I thought she was going to spit in my hand and I didn't know what deal we had made. But so you make a deal with somebody, you spit in their hand, then you shake on it. Like you both spit, you sealed the deal. Okay, sealed the deal. And she's like, that's the only reason people put their hands out and make them. I didn't know what deal it made, but I put my hand out. And instead, the teacher like spanks her 6 times with a ruler and sends her off to the corner to stand in the corner. She just punished her. She whipped her and made her go stand in the corner. And the class just starts dying laughing because, first of all, she didn't hit her very hard in the hand. And second of all, it's Scout and she just got put in the corner. Like they are just rolling out of laughter. The other teacher comes over and says, "You got to keep things quiet over here." And finally the bell, not shortly after that, the bell rings, kids are dismissed for lunch, and everybody files out, and Scout's the last one to leave, and she sees Miss Caroline sink into her chair, put her forehead into her arms, and start crying. Teachers get their feelings hurt too. Teachers do the best that they can, and sometimes we make mistakes. And I can't tell you how many times I have driven home in tears because I don't feel like I've been enough. Miss Caroline's crying, and Scout says, "Well, if she had been nicer to me, I would have felt sorry for her." And that's the end of the chapter.